Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social media pages that we are up on these days, Facebook.com/El Paso History Radio Show, other Facebook pages as well, including El Paso History, and some of our great partner pages there and groups, including Remember and El Paso When, also the YouTube channel El Paso History TV, whole lot more, including again Twitter and Twitch.tv. So today is Saturday, February 4th, and today we are talking about the history and the many layers of history and ongoing current programming and how you can visit it out at the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. And I'll be talking with them about the different aspects of it, and particularly what's going on for this month. But of course, this is the place we say each and every Saturday, Texas history begins in El Paso. We do have a history moment at the start of Hour 2 from documentary filmmaker Jackson Polk, talking this week about the history of the Fountains at Farah, why it has that name, and how it came to be the shopping center that it is today here. But joining us here in studio right now, we are joined by Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Absolutely happy to have you all on, because in my tenure on this program, haven't had you all on, and yet it's been a site that I've been always appreciating visiting many times over the past years. And it's a unique one in a whole bunch of ways, even in terms of in the state and in particularly in our local region. So knowing more about it, making sure people know how to particularly go out there and enjoy it, and all the things that they are surrounded by and walking on top of in some cases is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredibly special site. It's right in our backyard. There's layers and layers of history, like you said, and there's so many ways to enjoy it. So I hope people come out.
I mean, that's why the name, among other things, is the mouthful, State Park and Historic Site, because all of these things and more are present out there. So whenever, for anyone who maybe has somehow not heard of this here, I'd be surprised if they're in this area and have heard this show previously, but there's always someone who has maybe not been experiencing. Someone the other day asked me, so wait, there's a Thunderbird on the mountain? And so things that may seem obvious to people who have been around for a long time or like seeking things out may not. There's always people that are being introduced to something, and should be no animosity towards them. So if there's someone that has been like, so wait, what is this place? Where do you go about start explaining it?
Sure. That's kind of a tough one. So Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site, right? And so the name kind of says a lot of things. We are a state park, so we are a recreational site where you can go out and hike and climb and picnic and camp and do all of those really cool things. But we're also a historic site, an archaeological site. So lots of history, culture, and it's just such a very, very important place. Thousands of years of cultural history that you can just walk among, right? So you mentioned that you're walking all over all kinds of things.
Right.
And it's not uncommon to see archaeology right off the trail, things like pottery and projectile points. You can see thousands of pictographs that span an 8,000-year time period. So many, many, many layers of history and culture that people can go out and learn more about and experience. And you're totally right. The El Paso community doesn't sometimes know the many, many layers of things that are going on there. I know, we've gone out there to maybe picnic and hike,
Sure.
and especially in the past, a lot of the community went out there for things like Easter and special occasions, and it was a really, really popular picnicking site. But sometimes people don't realize that the vast amount of history and culture and importance that the site still holds. So it's a really interesting site in that we manage it in a way that is beneficial to really both of those things. It's a recreational site, absolutely. It's beautiful. We want people to go out there and enjoy it. But it is also, like I said, an active archaeological site.
Absolutely.
A historic site, and it's just incredibly important. It's really special.
Ever since I visited there, I've kind of had, in the more modern times, I mean, been going out to Hueco tanks for years, ever since I was a kid myself, and visited other places around the world. I've kind of think about it is that, yeah, if you go out to Hueco tanks and are particularly like picnicking there, having a good time, it's kind of like picnicking in the middle of the Roman Forum, but not necessarily knowing what's around you there, that you're literally surrounded by not even just generations, but millennia of history, and you could be literally on top of something that hasn't even been explored or discovered yet, just because that's the nature of a site like this.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's really incredible. And Hueco Tanks, it's a national historic landmark.
Yeah.
It's a new designation, but that just speaks to the importance of the site. It holds importance not only for our city, for our region, for the state, but really the history of the entire country. And so you're absolutely right. You can be at a picnic site or at a campsite and be near pictographs that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And so it's pretty incredible.
And we're just popping up some of the pictures of some of the features, both modern, natural, historic, that are out there on the site here. So we'll be talking more about this throughout the progression of both hours on the program right now. But I kind of want to start with just what the feature is out there, because, I mean, there's many other places around our region that people may have also visited, familiar with, driven by. Recently went out to the Tucson Way and went through the interestingly named Texas Canyon that has these kind of large boulders kind of looking thing, but these very distinct rocks kind of sprouting out of the landscape. And people may see some similarity there, or like the City of Rocks kind of out that way-ish, though. Hueco Tanks itself, the name is interesting, but the actual geologic feature that it is, well, it's just kind of out there in the middle of the desert, and that may seem as like, what's going on there? How did that happen if you don't know what's going on with it?
Right, yeah. It is totally different than really everything around us. And and so as you're driving out to Hueco, it really feels like you're just driving out into the middle of the desert. Mm-hmm. Just driving down Montana and then driving down that road, 8 miles down Hueco Tanks Road, until seemingly out of nowhere, there's just this random pile of large boulders. It truly is. It's different than everything around us. And I like to say that that's where the specialness of Hueco begins, is with those rocks and with that feature. And
the rocks inform pretty much everything that happens around there, because among other things, in some of the pictures we're going up with now, the name itself there is not WACO, Waco, Texas. This is completely separate. This is HUECO, and I'm hearing Leon Metz in the back of my head as he explained it in some of those videos back in the day, meaning a hollow place, and because this is where water collects, among other things. And this is some of the kind of ponds around the area, though. We also have some pictures of the way the water actually goes up, under, and beneath the rocks as well.
Right, yeah. So Hueco Tanks, Hueco is the Spanish word for hole or hollow. And so what we are talking about when we talk about huecos at Hueco Tanks are those holes or hollows in the rocks. And so there's a couple really important features about the intrusion that is Hueco Tanks. So it's an igneous intrusion. So it was hot molten rock, came up from under the earth. It was trapped underneath an already deposited bed of limestone. So there was limestone on the surface. Some pocket of magma or channel of magma came up from under the earth. It pushed up that limestone and it cooled underneath. And because of the way it was formed, it has a couple of really important features. First of all, the huecos. So these holes or hollows, they can range in size anywhere from like softball size to swimming pool. Some of them are huge.
Right.
And then the rock itself, the nature of the rock, it is it's porphyritic syenite. Not important. It's a type of igneous rock, but it's a non-porous rock.
Right.
So when it does rain, when we do get rain, those huecos, those holes, those hollows can hang on to water anywhere from a couple of days to 365 days a year. So some of them have water all year round, and it's incredibly important.
Yeah, in a variety of ways, including to like local flora and fauna that live out there and rely on this. But then, of course, the presence of water in so many senses often ends up meaning life. And so that's part of the reason that there is this thousands of years of cultural history out there, because the way I think of it in describing the approach there, as you kind of mentioned, the long drive and then the even further drive down the specific road to Hueco Tanks Road, this is in the middle of nowhere. This is not like an outcropping of a nearby mountain. It's in the plains in between both, the Franklin Mountains, and then you start getting into the Hueco Mountains itself. But it's kind of out there, just middle of the desert. And so that alone would be kind of imagine if you're a ancient person wandering around and had no idea about this area, it'd be like, oh, hey, what's that over there? That looks interesting. I'm going to go look at that. And then you find that there's water there, constantly water there, with seemingly, there's not a river there. There's not a spring, something coming forth here that may be experienced in other places. There's just water. Just hanging out, and constantly, like you were saying, despite dry conditions, despite the lack of rain or any time of year. So that obviously is enticing and drawing both, again, of people and wildlife in a variety of ways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So because of the water, like I said, the rocks are really where the specialness begins. So because of the water, there is lots of plant life. So there is, of course, plants that are supported by the water that are not typical of our desert. We see larger trees, of course, the species that we typically see in the desert, things like cottonwoods and mesquites and things like that. But on a much larger scale and just more abundance. And then, of course, we see other things like ferns and mosses and liverworts, like you're seeing right there. And so things that we don't typically expect to see in the desert. So the water and that resource really does help support these species. And then, of course, plants and water bring lots of wildlife. And so, again, we're seeing species that you typically see in the desert, but definitely in much more abundance. So things like javelina, like we have up on the screen right there. And so animals like those are quite common. We see them in more of abundance than we do in the desert flats around us.
Absolutely, and of course that can end up attracting other things, such as the things that like the javelinas, including bobcats. I've seen out there like the tufts of the ears of like foxes or maybe even like small coyotes, things like that, because they are attracted to this because it is I'll just be willing to call it an oasis, but not in the kind of traditional Sahara Desert the cartoon idea that we have in our mind here, because this is the Chihuahua Desert and things work differently here. And the reason this exists is because of the rocks themselves.
Right, yeah. And I don't think you're wrong in calling it an oasis. It's an oasis in so many ways. It's a natural oasis, an ecological oasis, but it's also a cultural oasis, right? So all of those things, the plants or the water, the plants, the animals, the shelter that the rock provides. If you look around, there's all kinds of caves and crevices and great places for refuge. And so all of those things have brought people there for thousands of years and continue to do so. Even now, we seek these places that are beautiful and that we can rest our minds in. And so I think Hueco Tanks is one of those landscapes, definitely. And I do consider it a living landscape that throughout time has just changed, and the way people change and the way we experience it and use it continues to evolve as well.
I also kind of consider it, beyond the oasis part, as an open air museum because of all the things. And again, the literal layers. I'm not using that metaphorically in this case, because you've got prehistoric, pre-modern, modern use history going on all over this site here. So, odds are, even if you're on a trail, I would be willing to bet there's probably something underneath you of significance that just may not have been fully explored, chosen not to be disturbed, or etc. Because anytime you find a place that is this interesting, this inhabited for this long, odds are that everything around you, probably within a stone's throw and beyond, has something. Someone was doing something there at some point that you can probably find evidence of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, people don't realize what a special site they have here in El Paso, here in our city. You go to, all kinds of places. You go to like Chaco Canyon, and there is one dominant culture that's represented. You can go there and you can learn the history, the prehistory of those ancestral Puebloans, right? And so there's one dominant culture represented. And you come to Hueco, and there is, a cultural timeline that's 10,000, 12,000 years old, and multiple different cultures represented. And so you can see, all of those things out there. And so it is truly special. So from, like you said, prehistory to historic usage, right? And so with the ranching era and all of that stuff. So it's such an incredible place, and it's people don't realize the the great resource that they have right here in their backyard.
Absolutely here. So we're going to be talking a lot more about some specifics on this, but kind of want to give that overview of all the things that we'll be metaphorically digging into, and you all have done some literal digging into over the years and in different circumstances here. So again, joining us here in studio right now is Nicole Roque, community outreach specialist with the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. One thing I want to mention here, and we'll mention a couple other times during the program, that because of the nature of this site, there are some slightly different usage and the way the usage works out there because of both the demands and respect for the site and then the cultural significance. People can go out there. It is open and available, but there are some important limits and restrictions people need to know about.
Correct. Yep. So we do operate much differently than your typical state park because we are a historic site, a cultural site, a very spiritual site for many people.
Yeah.
We need to just be mindful in our usage. And so I know a lot of the El Paso community remembers, especially the older community, remembers the closure of Hueco Tanks and the implementation of all of our regulations. And so we currently operate under a public use plan. And so that public use plan, or some version of it was developed in the late 90s, 1998. And so that's when those regulations were implemented. And they were unfortunately implemented because many years of misuse and kind of a really abuse of that site. And so we have that public use plan, and there are some regulations in coming and visiting the park, but it's all within good reason. So some of the most important things for visitors to keep in mind is we do have a capacity.
Right.
And so we have a capacity of 70 people on North Mountain, which is our self-guided mountain. So visitors can access one mountain on their own. And so we do have that capacity there. And so if you do plan on coming out into the park on your own, one of the best practices is to try and make a reservation. And you can make a reservation by calling our reservation line in Austin, Monday through Friday. You can find that information on our website. So tpwd.texas.gov. And so go to that website. You can find the information on how to make a reservation to go out into the park on your own.
And that phone number, do have it right here, 512-389-8911. You mentioned the reservation line based out of Austin there. I'll say that one more time, 512-389-8911. But of course, tpw.texas.gov, and then search for Hueco Tanks, HUECO TANKS. You can find the information, the details, information about what's out there, and again, how to make that reservation. So we're going to be talking a whole lot more about that and mention that a few more times. So if you missed that right now, don't worry, we'll come back to it. But we're going to be talking more about some of the, again, geologic features and then what that has created over the years after this next break. So stay tuned for more on the El Paso History Radio Show here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. We are, of course, the El Paso History Radio Show on Facebook. Head to that page for our weekly promo announcements on what will be coming up each and every week. Also, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/El Paso History TV, where we are also live streaming nowadays. But then you can also find the entire series of El Paso Gold DVDs from Capstone Productions, covering more than the last couple of decades of history and documentary production here in town, including the more recent ABC 7 TV series from El Paso History TV, featuring Bernie Sargent. And I was behind the camera on most of that there doing the production work, but you can see those completely and all uploaded free for your viewing pleasure. And of course, reminder to support some of our advertisers. Pepe's Restaurant in Canutillo is open for in-house dining at 6761 Doniphan Drive. You can call Pepe's, find out their hours during the week, or get your order placed by calling 915-877-2152. That's 915-877-2152. And it is home of the Juan and only Margarita. But of course, we are joined here in studio by Nicole Roque, a community outreach specialist with Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. So I just kind of want to reemphasize the geologic features of what we are talking about right now, because it is kind of nuts when you think about actually what it's like to go out there. I don't think we've done it justice describing it, but here's kind of an example of those little specks that we're showing at this giant outcropping. Those are the people. So when we say that this rises above the desert, how tall are we actually talking about, the highest extent that you'll have above the desert floor?
Yeah. So the highest point is about 470 feet high. And so 470 feet, that doesn't sound super high when we're talking, in comparison to like the Franklin Mountains here in the city. Sure. But when you're standing on 470 feet of a boulder like that, it's pretty big, yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about like, best other example I can give is like the White Cliffs of Dover, of just sheerness on the tallest part of it. It's not like it's a hill that goes up and you walk back down. No, you're looking straight down that 400, nearly 500 feet if you're in the exact right spot, kind of like those specks of people are.
Right, yeah.
We did have you had mentioned about the actual layout of the site here. So this is the aerial view that we have, because there are different neighborhoods is kind of the way I think of it, but different major outcroppings of rock that are there. So that picture we had from the people were looking like it was on the north part of it. Here, the part that you kind of loop around and into as you get into the park, because the road essentially goes north from Montana, and then you kind of end up looping around the northern part of the park, and then kind of end up nestled in, not exactly the middle, but in between the north and then some of like the central parts of the park, right?
Yeah, correct. So what you're looking at there is North Mountain up at the top, oriented north. And so that's your self-guided mountain. And so those are the big cliffs that people often see when they look at images of Hueco tanks, those images that we are looking at. The big front side of north. So those are the ones that you see. But you drive around West Mountain, which is the mountain on the bottom left there, that kind of triangular-shaped mountain. So as you're driving in, that big, tall mountain is actually the one that you first see. And that's our tallest mountain. And note that I am calling them mountains. We call them mountains, but they are shorter kind of outcroppings of rock.
But I would say hill doesn't apply either.
I don't think hill applies either, yeah.
Because this is solid rock. This is not that's a vague, incline and then decline, bunch of dirt kind of stuff. I mean, there's dirt out there, but the peaks, the parts and the tops of it, these are just giant chunks of rock that are there because of a quirk of geology of our area, and then everything that has come from that is one of the reasons we're still talking about it today, because there's so much significance and so much to go out there. So at its base level, it is a beautiful location and a very nice place we can go out and see. It ends up being a little bit cooler because of the whole kind of, I'm going to call it prehistoric evaporative cooling effect that kind of happens off the water there, and so it's a nice place to go and visit. But the appreciation of the geology is just one of the base layers of what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you can't even from the photos, they really, of course, photos never do a place justice, but you can't understand just how immense this place is until you're up on the rocks and you are in the caves and in the crevices. And just exploring around. And so you're right, at the very base level, it is just a beautiful scenic area where people can take the time to kind of relax and reconnect with just a really beautiful space.
And a good place to even hang out, again, any time of year, but summer makes it particularly attractive, as it end up being like several degrees cooler in most of the places you want to hang out in.
Absolutely, yeah. So we do tours all year round. And so I am out there in the park in June, July, on days when it's, 100 degrees out. But if you're in the shade, if you're in a cave, in a crevice, you're absolutely right. It does kind of function as evaporative cooling. So especially those places that have those natural cisterns that have water, as the air moves through those places, the cool rock, the water, it does feel like an air-conditioned room. So, getting from place to place might be a little bit rough, but once you get into some of those spaces, it is totally bearable even in the middle of summer.
So we'll talk more about that here. Already got to take that next break of this hour right now. But again, joining us here in studio right now is Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site, talking more about some of the other history going on out there after this next break. So stay tuned for more on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, want to mention some of our great partners in promoting many and different aspects of our local and natural history in the area, including the great group over at Celebration of Our Mountains. You can find them online, celebrationofourmountains.org. They have a lot of different many different events, frankly, whether it become nature walks, hikes, tours around certain areas and parts of town, or just investigation further into it, like coming up February 25th, seismology at the UTEP Seismic Lab, or a little bit more recently, February 11th, coming up a bird walk at the Mesilla Valley Bosque State Park. They've got a whole lot of different events, including about Mexican Revolution history, birding. This is a great time to get out there this time of year, so check them out, celebrationofourmountains.org. Search that up on your favorite search engine of choice. Here, a couple other events coming up in this coming week I want to mention at this point in time. On February 8th, the Southwest chapter of the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society will be meeting at 6 p.m. at Timo's Mexican Restaurant on 2000 Montana. Their program will be about the Gringos Curve massacre of the American miners in Mexico on January 10th of 1916. The public is invited. For information there, call 915-241-6285. That's 915-241-6285. And then on February 10th, the Rio Grande chapter of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas will be meeting at 11 a.m. at the El Paso Country Club, and the local winner of the historic essay contest, a 7th grader from Eastwood Middle School, will read her essay at that event. Interested women are invited to RSVP at 915-760-5775. That's 915-760-5775. But again, joining us here in the studio right now, we are joined by Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. So we've got a lot into the kind of state park aspects of this here, the natural features, the flora and fauna that are attracted by them. But of course, this didn't happen like yesterday. This is not something that was built up and turned into this overnight. These outcrops have existed there since, well, eons. We're talking about the development of them, how it came to be that they were underneath the ground and the wearing away of it, and the hardness of the rocks themselves, making them still stick around and jut as far up as they do now. And of course, the fact that they've been there for eons means that ancient peoples were, again, even just by the, hey, what's that over there kind of sense, maybe initially, have been going there for millennia. I mean, you said 12,000 years has been some of the investigation you all found?
Yeah, 10,000, 12,000 years is kind of the estimate. And that's just archaeological evidence, right? So that's what we have in our archaeological record. And so, I think a more accurate statement is to say that people have been there since like time immemorial.
That sounds reasonable in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not unreasonable to think that people have absolutely been there for much, much longer.
Basically, as long as there's been people here, they've likely been going there for all the reasons we mentioned. I mean, the reason that there is still flora and fauna, plants and animals going out and living there today, and in the times before, be able to microwave something, that would actually be a reason to go out there, even just, following herds or, looking for wildlife. And then, of course, the water. Water equals life, particularly in this region. And so all of these factors would have made this even just conceptually quite attractive, and therefore the culture and the human habitation and evidence that comes along with that extends again, for the thousands of years we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so at least 10,000 years of human history have been documented there. So some of the earliest people, paleo hunters, their time there is known through the archaeological record through things like Folsom Spear Points. And so Folsom Points are what tells us that those people were around Hueco, around that area. And then some of the things that people can actually see are things like pictographs, right? And so some of the oldest pictographs are estimated to be about 8,000 years old, left by a culture that we refer to as the Desert Archaic. So Desert Archaic people around 8,000 years ago, they were a nomadic people. So they were, hunter-gatherers moving through the area, using likely the area seasonally, for, gathering plants and small game. And so they leave some of the first images out on the rocks. Very abstract geometric designs. I don't think I have a photo of any. I should have grabbed a photo of some archaic imagery, but very abstract geometric designs, often in reds and yellow pigments. So really, really interesting stuff.
So there's a couple of phrases that come up here that people may have heard or may not be familiar with. We're talking about petroglyphs and pictograms. And essentially the way I've always thought about it is that a petroglyph is pecked into the rock here. So it's actually chipping away at it. So in some of the cases in around the state park and the historic site, it may be where there's like essentially a layer on the outside that's darker until they pick away to get to the lighter part underneath, and therefore have things like that. Those can, just because of the fact that it's actually a physical change to the shape of the rock, maybe last longer. But there's also in the pictograms the stuff that is like painted onto it because of the way of the nature it is. This is not all vertical walls. I mean, we have this one great image I'm going to pop up right now of showing kind of the dichotomy and integratedness of the two different sets of there. There's one of the, I think, maybe older images you're talking about there, but this one particularly, we're looking at both the natural landscape, the sheer outcroppings, the attractiveness of it, and then if you look towards the top of the image, you'll, if you weren't looking for it, you may have missed it because, oh wait, that's a face, because we have one of the arguably more recognizable, at least the ones that I've seen most commonly from this site, kind of this starry-eyed figure, or face anyway.
Yeah. It's one of our most well-known pictographs. People come from all over the world to view this image. And you're right. So Hueco Tanks, the imagery at Hueco Tanks is mostly pictograph, which means that it is painted on the rock, which is really interesting because the same culture of people within the same area, within the same region, left primarily petroglyphs, images that were etched, scratched, or abraded into the rock. And so it's really interesting that here at Hueco, we have these painted images, these pictographs, and there's over, some estimates, 3,000 individual images, around 275 panels of images, so multiple images together on one face of rock. So different cultures, different time periods have different types of imagery. So I said some of the older images are primarily geometric, abstract. Sure. And then we have another prehistoric culture, the Jornada Mogollon. They leave the majority of the images that we see there. Something around 80% of the imagery at Hueco Tanks is attributed to this culture of people. And so what you're seeing there on the screen is two of the over 200 painted masks or face designs. And these are just so incredible. They're all over the place. They are all different styles, different colors. They have similar elements throughout. And so you're seeing things like the conical hats, the step fret designs, the hollow kind of eyes.
Right.
But all different colors as well. So yellows, reds, blacks, whites. And then that first image that we were looking at, the one of the mask with the star eyes underneath that overhang, has green in it, or a turquoise color. It's the only documented turquoise out there in the rock outcroppings, but it's such an incredible image. And I mean, you can tell from the photos how well preserved they are. And so you can go out there and see some of these images that look like they were painted yesterday. And you know, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them just being the nature of the desert.
Of course.
Right? So we're a lot drier, not as much rain. And then there's this varnification process that happens with wind and rain as well. So slow deposition of minerals over the top of these images has kind of like sealed them in. These are primarily mineral-based pigments as well, which also helps them really kind of adhere to the rock and allows us to view them some of them as if they were painted yesterday. And I mean, this is not even the only evidence that you have out there of the human habitation. I mean, the nature of the rock and the way that it does the mineral qualities of it, like you were talking about, the hardness of it has also led to there being, of course, you know, the trapping of water, but even the use of it then as, well, kind of, cooking implements, I guess would be the right way I can think of it. You know, the idea of molcajetes or metates and used to grind and prepare meals, essentially. Yeah, absolutely. And so when walking around, you can run across these places where you can see evidence of people and people for hundreds or thousands of years. And so things like what archaeologists would call bedrock mortars. So these mortars in the rocks that were used for food preparation. You might know them as molcajetes or metates, but these holes in the rocks. And so we're talking about huecos and the holes in the rocks. When we talk about huecos at the park, we're talking about the natural features. I think it's important to note that what we're looking at here is not a natural feature. This is a man-made feature. And so I mentioned the rock here. And so this is a igneous intrusion. It's a softer granite, but it is a granite. So I always ask people to imagine what it would have been like to grind a feature like that. Rock on rock, hand ground into the rock. Some of these features are at least 2 feet deep. There's over 300 of them. So it just really speaks to the amount of people, the length of occupation, and the things that they were doing there, right? And so it's very connecting to be able to find these features, sit at them, and really kind of take in your surroundings. And you can understand why these places were chosen. So yeah, things like molcajetes, metates, also smaller grinding features, cupules, where in the past remnants of pigments have been also recovered. So food preparation of medicine, possibly even preparation of pigments as well. You can see evidence of just walking around. Again, that's Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. Got to take that next break right now. Coming out, we're going to close out this hour, but we got a lot more to talk about, particularly in the second hour of the program, as we're talking about, again, the Hueco Tanks, all of the
parts of it and getting more into the history and including in some of the pre-modern history. So stay tuned. More on the El Paso History Radio Show after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Givenbaney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM, mentioning as we do some of our other great partners and talking about different aspects about El Paso history, including, of course, Rick Kern's music podcast, Talk and Rock Radio. You can go to talkandrockradio.com to see his latest episodes back in production for 2023, including talks most recently with Leland Sklar, the inimitable Steve Postal, and a Ronstadt Review, The Ultimate Tribute, and a whole lot more. So go, of course, again to talkandrockradio.com for that. We'll be talking with Rick in soon-to-come episodes of this program as well about his musical background and the history that he has been a part of and been able to talk about and feature in both his ways and some previous productions, including, of course, the Border Legends tour that I got to be able to have a hand in on the background on production of. So all that coming in future weeks on this program, but, of course, find them and their podcast, talkandrockradio.com. And as you mentioned there at the intro to the segment, call 915-588-1850. That's 915-588-1850 for Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate. Patrick is an excellent realtor to go to for El Paso homes for sale or rent. Again, the reason I'm in the house I'm in right now is because of him and his great team. So call again, 915-588-1850. But again, joining us here in studio right now, as we have had this past hour, is Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with the Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. So we're talking a lot about essentially the open air museum aspect of the site and that historic site part of the description. And there was at least a couple more images that I wanted to focus on to kind of show both where there is the availability and how you can still see things. And again, I love that, just the outcrop and how you can just be staring at the landscape and, oh, right, there's a mask face thing looking at me. But a lot of them can be not exactly the geometric shapes you were talking about. This is an intricate design. This is what it may look like, but you all have specialized tools and investigation ways to really still be able to reveal what even the sands of time may have worn down to an extent or made less visible. There's still definitely ways you can even see stuff that you might not be able to see from the naked eye.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so archaeologists and people who study pictographs have been developing ways to enhance images that might not be visible to our naked eye. And so one of the tools that we use is actually an application. It's called D-Stretch, and it's something that the public can actually download on their phone.
Oh, okay.
It's a really cool tool, especially if you're interested in pictographs or imagery. And so basically what this does is it inverts the colors in the photo that allows us to see spectrums of light that we might not typically see with just our naked eye. And so you take a picture and then you add those filters to it, and it allows you to see so much more. And so in that example there, you do see the image, and it's a little bit faint.
Right. In the original, you
in
can
the original, yeah.
It's almost, okay, for lack of a better term, almost looks like a kind of a spider head kind of thing on top of this, almost like woven quilt-like design, and you might be seeing something vaguely faint down below it, but then when you do the filter, like you say, in front of it, there's a bunch of images surrounding this main one, and even the clarity of it comes up even more. So you're seeing another mask, another design down to the left here. So there's even beyond what the naked eye can see, and this is part of, I mean, in a very specific way, but there's, I mean, y'all are often doing further archaeological investigation and have done a lot in the past, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Hueco Tanks is an archaeological site, and it's it's classified. While some sites might have archaeological sites on the land in the park, all of Hueco Tanks is an archaeological site. It's all one archaeological trinomial. So there's just so much stuff going on there. Of course, one of the first photos you showed was the excavation of some of the pit houses, communities of pit houses from prehistoric times. And so those were excavated in the 1970s. We were able to, find out all kinds of new and interesting things about how these people lived their everyday lives. But it is still an archaeological site. So there's still archaeology being done. And so one of the current projects is looking at hearth features. So some of these earthen ovens underneath the ground. And so they're actually able to uncover those, look at what is inside of them, any sort of plant matter, bone matter, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're able to take charcoal or any sort of organic matter and then radiocarbon date it and tell when some of these features were being used. And it's just such an interesting project. And constant study and research still being done today.
Absolutely here. So again, that's Nicole Roque, community outreach specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. We'll be talking more with her, particularly about the pre-modern history, kind of maybe around the idea of these kind of investigation, but also inhabitation of the site in the modern sense. So stay tuned for more here on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk, continuing, of course, our discussion about the many layers and continuing our investigation of some of the more modern-ish ones on the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. But starting hour 2 of the program, as we usually do, with a history moment from documentary filmmaker Jackson Polk, talking this week about some of the history involved in the site that we now know as the Fountains at Farah.
Everyone in El Paso knows about the Fountains at Farah, the upscale shopping center on Gateway West that opened in 2013. But where did that name come from? The story starts in 1920, when Lebanese immigrants Mansour and Hana Farah founded Farah Incorporated in a tiny shop on San Francisco Street. Mexican seamstresses made blue chambray work shirts that sold for 35 cents. The business moved to larger and larger buildings and added denim work pants and khaki work clothes. During World War II, the company made combat pants, fatigues, and uniforms for the Army. By 1953, Farah was producing 24,000 pairs of slacks daily, sold to J.C. Penney, Sears, and Montgomery Ward. In 1967, when Farah went public, it had 9,500 U.S. workers and had revolutionized clothing manufacturing with permanent press slacks. Work began on a huge new manufacturing facility on Gateway West. It was so big that supervisors rode bikes around the factory floor. At its peak, Farah was the second largest employer in El Paso. Workers received on-site health care, cafeteria benefits, and a generous wage. But to keep growing, the company made huge capital expenditures and set higher quotas for workers. In 1972, workers went on strike, demanding the right to unionize. What was called the strike of the century was settled in favor of the workers, but when it ended, sales had dropped, 5,000 employees had been laid off, and only the El Paso plant remained open in the U.S. At the same time, American taste in clothing was changing. People were wearing jeans, not slacks or leisure suits. Sales continued to slow. The company had its ups and downs, and eventually the Farah name was sold to Perry Ellis International. In 2010, the empty Farah plant on Gateway West was demolished. 3 years later, the first stores opened their doors at the Fountains at Farah. I'm Jackson Polk with this history moment for the El Paso History Radio Show.
Of course, I have to mention at this point some of our other great partners in El Paso history work, including Barbara Given-Bainey, operator of the great Facebook group Remember in El Paso When. You can go there for archive pictures galore. They have more than 34,000 members now, actually, as a matter of fact, and they have a lot of great topics and investigations that they do over there, but they do ask that the administrators work hard in researching for photos with our history attached, and so they do ask that when you are going into and using or sharing these photos, to please give credit to their site. And of course, a lot of credit to be given to them and how they manage these things, because keeping a group like that on track and on focus here is no mean feat, and so there's a lot of credit to be given to the administration and moderation staff, including, of course, Chief Admin, Owner, and Historian Barbara Given-Bainey, affectionately known as BGB, but then also administrators Rick Nahara, Margaret D. Smith, Rick Duncan, and Jim Gerber, along with moderators Ben Vincent and Dan Graves. They're always looking for more few good hands in order to help maintain and keep the site on mission, so if you want to either join or join their group and moderation team, Remember in El Paso Paso When, the name of the group there. You can also see our promo announcements and the share of this live stream each and every week. But again, joining us here in studio right now, we are continuing to be joined by Nicole Roque, the Community Outreach Specialist with the Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to talk about a fascinating subject, topic, and series of layers to unravel that we've been kind of going down to the base level and working our way up for when it comes to the state park and historic site out there in the middle of the gap between mountains here. It's a fascinating site in a whole lot of ways. One of the parts I want to make sure we get to as we kind of inch towards modernity is the way I've been kind of thinking about how we've been talking about it today, is that it kind of referred to the pre-modern era, which even in that way has a few different connotations, because we've talked a lot about the historic, prehistoric peoples and presences at the site, but to say that that was okay and then we just go to the modern era would be wrong, because when we mentioned that there's been continuous evidence and habitation out there that does go through more or less today, including in what we would consider recorded history as well, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so when we talk about the people that have found resource and refuge and found Hueco tanks important, we often talk about prehistoric people, and that's usually where our minds go. But it's important to recognize that there are still people who have used that space and that site for hundreds or even thousands of years as well. So communities like the Mescalero Apache,
right.
The Kiowa, the Comanche, the Isleta del Sur Pueblo here in El Paso, the Tiguas, and then also the Isleta Pueblo further up north as well,
right.
are all communities who used Hueco tanks, who lived at Hueco tanks, who found resource and refuge and ceremony there. And so, evidence of their time there is also documented. And so you see a picture right there, and most El Pasoans will recognize.
Very recognizable, yep.
Yeah, recognize that symbol, right, as the People of the Sun symbol from the Isleta del Sur Pueblo, the Tiguas. And this is a pictograph that's found out at the park, out at Hueco tanks. And so Hueco is still a very special site to many different people, a very spiritual site, and important to the history and culture of many living and modern communities as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's even depictions of, this might not be exactly it, but been informed previously of there being depictions of even like battles that are of historical record then being documented in its own way on the rocks out at Hueco tanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while we look at some of the pictographs that are prehistoric images, we don't always know what these mean, right? They're very abstract, they're very mysterious, but there are oral histories that tell us of different events from different communities. So when going out to Hueco, you can see the Kiowa siege panel. It's a panel of pictographs that tells the story of a siege that took place between Kiowa warriors, Tiguas, and Mexican soldiers as well.
Right.
And so super interesting. And those are great because there are oral histories on some of them. And so we can have a deeper understanding of what some of these images mean and what they mean to these communities as well.
Particularly significant for me in that kind of circumstances because, as he kind of said, it's tempting to think of these as just, prehistory, before there was other written records, this was happening. But no, the fact that there's literally an overlap between what is documented history, I mean that whole interaction with Mexican soldiers. We're not talking about the people who would become Mexican. We're talking about the country of Mexico in existence at that point in time and covering this area, of course, and therefore the conflict that was happening at that point in time still being put into pictographs because that was the form still being used by the other native peoples of this region at that point in time. The fact that we have that kind of overlap of forms of history is fascinating to me.
Oh, it's so cool. And so you can even within the images, I tell people to use some of those clues to kind of inform you a little bit about the time period, right? And so if you go back to that last photo of the figures there, so you've got a few figures. Note the difference in style, but the content as well. you're starting to see horses.
Right.
And so that can tell you a little bit about the time period and possibly the people and what was going on in the world when these images were painted.
Because notably, the arrival of the horse in the Americas and the Southwest, particularly, was a sea change of history, among other things, coming along with, the colonial settlements and invasions that came along with it. So you can definitely find some differences here that would not be something that you would see in the total prehistory eras because it didn't exist here.
Correct. Yeah. We had a horse, right? Pleistocene horse. It was not that horse right there. Yeah. A little horse. So it is really, it's really interesting to be able to, document that history and see some of those things. And so in some of the images as well, this one, for example, it's very important to the Tiguas and to their histories and really how they came to be here in El Paso. And so this image also tells a very important story.
Absolutely. And again, very recognizable in its own right. I mean, in the modern sense, or the people who may not have been out to the site might think like, wait, isn't that for Speaking Rock? Because it is associated with that in the marketing now, but again, as a important sacred symbol as well. So that's why you can see these things out there. Now, as we do kind of see that, at least shift in use, or the way land rights have often used and shifted and been taken, stolen, removed, etc. There was different uses that came into the site in the more modern era, including some differences in the ways the features on the rocks can be seen, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so as you walk through Hueco, not only are you seeing the histories and stories of indigenous people, but then you start to see the history and story of people passing through. And so as you walk around, you'll see what we call historic graffiti. And so some of these names and dates that have been left through travelers, 49ers on their way to California left some of the earliest names and dates on the rocks. And then the one that we're looking at there is actually really interesting. So you've got 9th Cavalry, and then September 1st, 1869.
Right.
And so that one has been attributed to Buffalo soldiers who have been, who were in the region during that time period. So just layers and layers and layers of history can be found throughout the site. And so as you're walking around, it really is kind of like a history book. And so on some of these rock faces, you can see things on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. It just speaks to the use and how, that continues to change with how people change and how we use land.
Yeah, and particularly the way that site was used here. Of course, it didn't go straight from being just this natural outcropping that people culturally inhabited to then being a state park. There was other uses that came through the middle of them here, including some, been out there and seen reenactments previously, actually, of some of it. And we actually have an interesting depiction of it there during, it was actually a pretty short period of time, to my understanding, like a period of a handful of years, but as a stop on the Butterfield Overland Stagecoach Trail, as well as, mail services and that kind of thing here. That's part of the ruins that you can see out at the site right now, kind of near-ish the visitor center, right?
Right. And so it was at one point thought that was the actual stagecoach stop. So the ruins that you see in front of our interpretive center.
The interpretive center, right.
But it is no longer thought that. It's thought that the stagecoach stop was actually closer between the pass between North Mountain and East Mountain. And so kind of going from north and then down south, but so through the pass between those two large mountains, kind of on the top, right? And so, so that first image was actually just kind of an imagining. It's a painting, actually. It's a really good painting.
It's pretty photorealistic, I'll say, but there was not a color camera at that point in time.
There was not, no. And the buildings would have been a little bit different. But this is an imagining of what the stagecoach stop may have looked like. And you're right, it didn't operate for very long, 1858 to 59, so really only 1 year before the stagecoach stop moved a little bit further south, where it could run along the forts and where there was also more reliable water.
Yeah, because I mean, this was a decent stopover, don't get me wrong, but again, if you're trying to then keep going to some place as opposed to just like stopping there, it's a little bit out of the way, I would argue.
Absolutely.
So again, that's Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site, talking more about some of the, again, pre-modern historical use of the site and how it came to be the state park. Talking more about that after this next break on the El Paso History Radio Show here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the Juan and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC 7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, want to tell you about what we got coming up for you next on the program, and that is going to be, as I kind of already mentioned, Rick Kern, of course, his music podcast, Talkin' Rock Radio, but more also on, not even what he just investigates there, but the history that he has experienced, been a part of, and some of the kind of particularly golden age of rock and roll in El Paso, the bands that came through, some names that you're very likely to recognize Bobby Fuller, among others, comes to mind here. But there's a whole lot more that goes into that we will be breaking down for you. That'll be next week on the program next Saturday. Of course, one more sponsor to remind you about. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Go there with out-of-town visitors for souvenir, jewelry, gifts, and decor items. They have a great selection of both literal and figurative flavors of the Southwest, like literally food items, constantly being restocked. A great selection of Native American pottery, jewelry, craft items, sourced directly from creators. So definitely check that out. I'm always surprised by whenever I head out there and find something that I wasn't anticipating. And so great place to go for your own decor shopping, gifts, what have you. You can, of course, find them at missiondelrey.com, and they do ship around the world. They have an extensive shipping department in the back, but they, of course, have their 12,000 square foot showroom there on Lee Trevino near the intersection with Pelicano. Just look for the Mission Del Rey sign. Mention the El Paso History Radio Show for a discount and give them a call at 915-440-2140. That's 915-440-2140. But again, joining us here in studio right now, we do have Nicole Roque, the Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tanks State Park and Historic Site. So we've started talking a little bit more about the, let's just call it recorded history use, or the pre-modern use of it, talking a little bit about the Buffalo Soldiers, actually some of those, I guess we would call it the historic graffiti, the technical term to be used along with this, as you were saying, that we do have that example of that can be seen on the rock out there. But of course, even from that time frame, and I would call it the transition of use as it was traditionally to then a private ownership. Before we got to the state park era, there was, the stagecoach and the Butterfield Trail that we kind of mentioned, but then there was also ranching out there, among other things, right?
Yeah. So one of the first private owners of this site was the Escontrias family. So the Escontrias family, they lived there at the site from 1898 into 1956. And so you can still see lots of evidence or a lot, you can still see a lot of from when they lived there. And so most notably is our interpretive center. So our interpretive center is the old adobe ranch house that was built by Patriarch Silverio Escontrias. And so that building still stands. It was built in 1898 and it now serves as our interpretive center. So people can come and visit 2-foot adobe walls. It's an incredible building. But the family lived there. They were cattle ranchers. Silverio and his wife Pilar Escontrias, they had 11 children. So you can see that some of those photos, incredible photos from that time of their family and of the ranching operation out there. Visitors can also see some of the dams that the family built to kind of contain the water around the site for their cattle, to water their cattle, and of course for their family as well.
Because while there is certainly water available on the site, again, it's not a spring. It's not one nice little stream that you can do something with. So managing with it, besides like wildlife use, would be challenging, I would imagine, because it's not you can't just kind of put it in a trough. You'd be like, okay, cows, go find the water, I guess, kind of situation there. So I would imagine it would be interesting for it. But then in the aerial view that we keep popping up of the site there with the north, central mountains and the southern parts of it, there is that one very noticeable line kind of between the northern and southern reaches there, and that wasn't them, right? That particular dam, the Escontrias?
No. So that's a huge dam. As you're driving in, you'll notice it. It kind of connects West Mountain and North Mountain. And so that is what's left over from the Wilco addition. So after the Escontrias ownership, they sold it to some developers who had grand plans for Hueco. They were going they wanted to put a hotel up on North Mountain, golf courses, a civic center, an Old West Town as well. So the Old West Town was actually completed, but the main draw was going to be the lake. So 270-acre lake between the three mountains in that kind of central area of the park. And so they were going to do so by damming up that little pass between North Mountain and West Mountain. So they kind of scooped out the dam and they put it into this really, really large earthen dam, and they rerouted the way the water flows naturally. And so they brought in water and then they rerouted the natural watershed to kind of fill that lake up. Of course, It didn't stay for very long.
No, I wouldn't imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, so luckily for us, that dream was never realized, and we don't have a hotel up on top of North Mountain.
It's a vision, I guess, but in terms of a natural site, you're not exactly congruous with it. So the fact of the matter is that after that point, that plan fell through. The development didn't end up working out the way they wanted it to, and so it changed that a few more times, and then ended up in short order in state hands and as a state park, right?
Yeah, correct. It did operate as a county park for a while. El Paso County had it, and then they transferred it over to the state in 1969, and then Hueco Tank State Park opened in 1970.
Absolutely. So that's where we're getting to what you can do out there today. And so we'll have to talk more about that this next segment. Already due for that next break already. So continue our conversation about that. And again, how you can visit it and the programming going to be going on continuously and particularly for this month. So stay tuned. More on the El Paso History Radio Show after this quick break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC 7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Hueco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, we're on mention about our other great sponsors and partners in promoting El Paso history, including this program, El Paso Wink. You can go there and find our weekly promo announcements printed in the paper with maybe a little bit more detail as well on some of the subjects and the guests we will be talking about each and every week. El Paso's business journal, El Paso Inc., is available for home or business delivery. To get your subscription and get either to your home or get it digitally, you can order it online at elpasoinc.com. Appreciate them as we continue our mission to talk about the history of El Paso, and they recently appreciate their support of it. But again, joining us here in studio is Nicole Roque, the Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. So we've been talking a lot about how we got to the way the park is now, essentially all the setup and what can still be seen out there and many of the interesting parts of it. But of course, the park itself, as we kind of mentioned last hour, but want to get into a little bit more here, works a bit differently. Again, there are limits on use. There are requirements for use. I mean, important details people need to know. There is camping and things like that, but the most importantly, most impacting, I think, to most people would be that there are essentially limitations on how many people can be in the park at one time. 70 people, like you were saying?
Correct. So 70 people self-guided. Self-guided. So if you wanted to go out into the park and like just kind of explore on your own or have a picnic with your family, you would be subject to that 70-person capacity. However, we do offer tours and programs and hikes, which people can get on, and you're not subject to that 70-person capacity. So if, for instance, we are full up on a day, you can't get a reservation for Saturday, call the park and see if we have a tour going out. We offer tours, pictograph tours, hiking tours, bouldering tours, and then also special programming Wednesday through Sunday. Our pictograph tours right now are at 9 a.m. And so that's a 2.5 to 3 hour tour where you can go out and explore the park. And not just explore the car park, but do so with a guide who can tell you a little bit more about the history and the culture. You know, we just really scratched the surface on
really
there's so much that you can talk about. So imagine going out and seeing some of these places with your own eyes, but with someone who knows a little bit more about the site and can tell you more about them.
So, and again, the area that is for the self-guided and kind of, you know, on your own, that's the northern part of this aerial view we're looking at there. The other parts, you know, the kind of, you know, central, southern, and, you know, south, just looking cardinally, I know you refer to them differently here, but, you know, south, western part of the overall and the mountains there, all of those parts those are the tours.
Correct. Yeah. So those are accessible with a guide. And so, like I said, we offer pictograph tours. So those are primarily historic tours. And then we offer hiking tours, which are a little bit more recreational. So if you're looking for less talking and more just kind of exploring and getting up on the rocks and in the caves, you can go on a pictograph tour. And then we also offer bouldering tours, climbing tours as well. So people can join a bouldering tour, and that's technical rock climbing. So, folks on those tours, of course, would need their own equipment and some experience.
Yeah, this is not just, this is kind of a steep. This is a fingertip kind of experience, as we're kind of seeing there with that a gentleman in a very interesting position with a bunch of people down below him ready to catch him if he goes, and like crash pads. So there is specialized equipment, not just like, oh no, these are really good shoes. Like you need special equipment to do these kind of things.
Right, absolutely. And this is for, of course, I'm talking on our the tours that we offer. There are concessions and outfitters who also work at the park. And so if you are a absolute beginner but want to get into it, you can visit our website. You can find some of that information there, and they can rent you shoes, they can rent you equipment, and they can provide some of that instruction.
So there's ways to get into it here, but again, a lot of different ways to enjoy and be a part of the park here. Just forewarned, forearmed, know what's going on to it. So of course, some of the sites of you all, of course, over on social media, including on Facebook, Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site, Texas Parks and Wildlife. So that's a good starting point. Or, of course, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department website, tpwd.texas.gov, and then search up Hueco Tanks. Again, Hueco, Hueco Tanks is what you're looking for there, because they got the reservation line, and that, particularly for the tours there, I note on the website, and it's a good advice to follow, you want those reservations made well in advance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So at least a week in advance for a scheduled tour. But I mean, if you're coming out tomorrow, feel free to give us a call. Call us. We already have one on the books that you can jump on. And so that's not completely uncommon.
Okay, so there's accommodations and ways, but I mean, the focus is on the use and being able to experience the site and all of its beauty and natural features. And I mean, coming into this is a good season to get out in general, because I mean, it is not too sweltering, even though this is a good place to be, even if it is, among other things. But I mean, we're not quite in the spring blooming season out there, as we're still in our, as I call it, the trial subscription of winter every year in our region. Well, I'm sure we'll get over that before too long. But, I mean, there's still plenty to see out there and experience. So, I mean, I've been out there when we've been waiting for some of those day use passes to open up and waiting for someone to leave the park so we could get in onto the non-guided tours here. So it pays to plan ahead.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely does. Try and plan ahead the best you can. But there are many options for people, jump on a tour, make a reservation. But yes, it's an interesting site. So even if you get there and there is a line, it's like a restaurant, right? So if there's 2 people that are coming out, I can let 2 people in. And so just because you get there and there's maybe a wait doesn't mean that you will not get into the park. Just be a little bit patient for us. It's absolutely well worth it. Or plan ahead, and that's always the best advice.
Yeah, early if you're planning to go out there and just hope you get the passes, reservations in advance if you can. But of course, as we've talked previously in this year about the celebrations that are going on and also the programming, a couple of things to mark there. This is the 100th anniversary of the Texas State Park system, in which you all will be doing programming a little bit later in the year. But even then, for this month, as you kind of mentioned, it is, of course, February, which also is known nationally as Black History Month. And so you're doing some of the commemoration programming, mentioning that and focused around on that and the impact in our region, and particularly on this site, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so this month, and we always do, but this month in particular, we'll be focusing some of our tours on Buffalo soldiers and their time spent there at the park, and then, of course, the history of the Buffalo soldiers and the legacy of the Buffalo soldiers in our region. And so all of our pictograph tours will have a focus on Buffalo soldiers, but we also have an amphitheater program on February 12th, where we'll just be talking a little bit more about the history and the legacy of that group of people.
So you all often do, I mentioned along the side of the specialized tours and those kind of things that you have these, again, specific relevant to the time frame that's going on here. We got some images of the previous kind of exhibitions that you all have done of, ironically enough, a buffalo in a picture there, but of also of a preserved rattlesnake in that case here. So, there's a lot of, not even all the tours are up necessarily in the rocks. There's a lot of focus on this, but there's a lot of trails all the way around them, right?
Oh, absolutely. And so, interestingly, a lot of the larger pictograph sites are actually ground level. There's trails directly to them, so it's not a super difficult thing to actually go and view and experience.
Absolutely. And of course, you have other cultural programming that often happens on the site as well. And that'll be a focus of the kind of major celebrations that the event that you're having in kind of commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the state park system, including the community fair coming up later in the year, right?
Yes. Community fair will be October 21st and 22nd. It's a great way for the community to come out and experience everything that Hueco has to offer. Of course, we have cultural demonstrations, like from the Tico youth dancers, who you saw that photo of right there. And then, of course, presentations and talks from biologists and historians. The Escontrias family comes out and talks a little bit more about their history. Wow. Yeah, and then tours every hour on the hour, so people can come out and experience Hueco tanks during that weekend. So that's October 21st and 22nd. And it's another great way to come out because that weekend there are no capacity limits. So we will let as many people in as we can get parked. We typically see around 1,200 people over that weekend. So we invite the community to come out and explore all the things that their city has to offer.
And of course, with this whole year, there's a lot to be celebrated as part of it. And there'll be more programming we've talked a little bit about both for this month and coming up later. But the programming beyond just the kind of standard tours or self-guided tours, you're always presenting something new.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. And so visitors can find more information on our special programming for the month on our website, on our social media as well, or just give us a call. We do, of course, night sky programming, scats and tracks, and specially focused hikes as well, plant hikes, bird hikes, things like that.
Absolutely here. So again, guest right now, Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. Just remember where you can find this information again. The reservation number, if you want to find that, 512-389-8911. That's 512-389-8911. But of course, you can find that information, the details, park usage, everything, tpw.texas.gov, and then search for Hueco Tanks. They also have a lot of their, particularly the programming and what is coming up over on your all social media, including, of course, on Facebook, Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site, and a lot of pictures y'all post on Instagram as well, right?
Oh, yeah. We're active on both Facebook and Instagram, so follow us for some photos, park alerts. You can also, if you have any questions, feel free to message me on there. That's where you can find the majority of the information.
Excellent. So, got to take that last break before we come back and finish out the show for you to talk a little bit more about the features and, again, how you can participate. So, stay tuned for more on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk, and of course, joining us here in studio has been Nicole Roque, the Community Outreach Specialist with Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. We've covered a lot of ground, both metaphorically, but also literally speaking, in the ground we've been discussing here. How many acres does the site actually cover here? There's a whole lot focused on there, but it's a sizable site on its own, but it's actually kind of surprising how concentrated it is in its size.
Yeah, it's actually, it's a smaller site for a state park. It's only about 860 acres. Mm-hmm. So to consider the amount of history and features that are all kind of compacted into that space is pretty incredible.
So you're never going to see it all in one day, even if you could be on the multiple different tours. That it's just not feasible. So multiple visits are certainly encouraged and expected if you really wanted to get the full flavor of it. So with all the programming coming up again this month, focused on the Buffalo Soldier, kind of in recognition of Black History Month and what comes along with that, and both the literal, figurative, and physical impacts that can be seen on the site, just as we were mentioning that historic graffiti, the phrase being used there. So there are impacts that can be seen and beyond even just the historical considerations. So when people come out to the site here, families are certainly encouraged. There are restrictions on pets. They can't go up into the actual trail areas, among other things, beyond the camping areas, right?
Yeah, correct. So if you're coming out to really explore Hueco Tanks and get into the rocks and on the trails, I'd recommend leaving your pets at home. But roads and picnic sites are open to pets. But if you really, really want to get into it and get to know the site, it's best to leave your pets there at home.
Because, of course, even beyond, again, all of the cultural and physical history out there, the wildlife and fauna that is to purpose to not be disturbed by that, is significant out there. I mean, the amount of different animals that you all have. I mean, we mentioned and had some of the pictures of like the javelinas and the bobcats. Is that actually from more or less the same kind of trail cam there?
It is. It's actually this exact same trail cam, just different times of day.
Yeah, so there's, and one maybe looking for the other there, the bobcat looking for the javelina.
Yeah, good thing they were there at the same time.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there is a lot of natural life out there. I mean, there's a whole lot more of the, other desert fauna that can be seen. I'm sure like, coyotes and quail, all those kind of things. I mean, there's a ton of different wildlife out there.
Yeah, and really cool stuff too. The aquatic ecosystems are incredible. So we didn't even touch on that, but within those huecos, during the right season in the summer when they have water, all kinds of amazing things start to pop up. Different types of shrimp.
The shrimp,
it is so cool. Speaking of prehistoric, these animals have been here for millions of years, and so morphologically the same since like dinosaurs were walking around. So you can see these aquatic organisms, things like fairy shrimp and tadpole shrimp, lots of amphibians as well, frogs and salamanders, and then of course in the summer all kinds of reptiles and things. Lots and lots of lizards and snakes and birds, over 200 species of birds that are there kind of year round. So lots of really cool things to go out and explore and experience.
Absolutely, particularly since, I mean, I just got to focus on the shrimp here for a second because it's kind of trippy when you think about it. Because, I mean, sure, there are some pools that are out there more or less all the time. A lot of them aren't, and yet you will see after a good rain and give it a minute, the shrimp out there because they have these incredibly accelerated life cycles where they essentially are revived by the rain, spawn, lay the foundation for the next generation of the eggs essentially, and then it dries back out, and you wouldn't know that there would be life possible there, but that's just the life cycle that has developed.
Yeah, it's really cool, and so that's also something that we need to be mindful of.
Absolutely.
What looks like just
a puddle, a pool, a ditch.
Or the dry ones, right? Yeah. So when the huecos are dry, they look like just a hole in the rock with some sand at the bottom. But the reality is within that sand is hundreds or thousands of these eggs that have desiccated. They're dry. And when there's enough rain and the temperatures are right, all of those eggs start to hatch out, and you have an entire ecosystem of things. Multiple different types of shrimp, also microscopic organisms like tardigrades and rotifers that are also swimming around in there. And so we have to be very mindful of those really fragile ecosystems because it's very easy for us to disturb them with just a touch of the hand or a step of the foot, really.
And it would be surprising and literally developing overnight, these ecosystems coming back to life as it happens with the rains. As infrequently as they come, when they do come, they tend to come in force in our region. We call it monsoon season for a reason out here, but even in between those, I mean, so all of that is a fascinating part of the history that can again be directly experienced. So again, got to direct people toward those resources. tpw.texas.gov is where they can find again all of the details to search up Hueco tanks, as well as on your social media. And so we mentioned a little bit about the program, but there's even more that's coming in between, the middle, recently and later in the year, right? Some stuff that's in the works.
Yes, absolutely. And so we've got in partnership with our other two state parks, our sister state parks here, the Franklin Mountains and the Weiler Aerial Tramway, a historical photo exhibit. We'll be talking about the history of state parks, so you can look for that in June. Some more information to come on that one.
Certainly.
But it'll be a great way for us to highlight the stories of our community in these spaces all throughout, El Paso.
Absolutely here. So a lot more to come and a lot of reasons to pay attention for us here. So again, joining us in studio right now has, of course, been Nicole Roque, Community Outreach Specialist with the Hueco Tank State Park and Historic Site. Thank you very much for talking to us about the features, the details, the history, geology, biology, all the ologies that are available and visible out there at the site, and how people can enjoy it, and giving us those details here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And, I hope to see some of your listeners as visitors on tours, learning a little bit more about the park.
Absolutely. So we'll have to leave it there for today because we're out of time here for the El Paso History Radio Show. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you all very much for tuning in. We'll, of course, be back next week on the program to talk more about different aspects about El Paso's history. So until then, have a great weekend, y'all.